Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon. The GSMC Football Podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and we are so delighted and honored to have you guys join us today on what has now turned into a beautiful day outside for everybody really up and down the East Coast. And other places that are getting hit by the hurricane. We hope that you guys are safe. We hope that you guys are doing okay. This is what I like to call, fold your umbrellas, bring your chairs inside, because they will be blown away if you don't. But in all seriousness, I know that here in North Carolina, we lost power for a couple hours, but that was really the only thing that's happened, so nothing serious for us. But I know, New Jersey, New York, other places are getting really hit by it much harder than we are. So we hope that you guys are okay out there. Stay safe, stay warm, have your flashlights, have your candles, all that good stuff. And listen to the show, the GSMC Football Podcast with your boy Kayvon while you hang in there. Because we will make you smile, hopefully. Now, we've got a fun show today. We're getting closer and closer to college football, possibly starting, to NFL football, possibly starting. See, it's crazy. Usually college football starts first, right? But now it's going to looks like NFL's going to start first, which is really weird. You don't usually think of that. I was talking to my friends the other day. We're heading out to the lake next weekend for my buddy B-Ray's birthday. You guys have obviously heard me bring him up a lot on this show. But it's his birthday, and we're heading out to Lake Gaston, which is just a lake about an hour and a half from where I'm at here. And I was like, you guys want to know, this is something depressing, but while we would be at the lake, that would be the first weekend of preseason football. And, again, preseason football, it's nothing big. It's really not that fun. It's usually pretty boring after the first game. You get to watch your rookies. You get excited all about that. But the main thing is football's back on. That's the exciting part. You get to see football back on, and it just immediately starts to think, oh, man, football is right around the corner. So no preseason this year. That's odd. NFL starting before college. That's odd. But I guess it's perfectly fitting for what 2020 has been, which has just been an odd year all around. So today what we're going to do to break down the first quarter, as always, trying to run back the kickoff like we like to do, we're going to talk about the interesting story that has come up in the Pac-12. And I love this story. I love it. I'm so proud of these players for standing up, and we're going to dive into it. But if you haven't heard, a group of Pac-12 football players have decided to come together and really make some demands to their Pac-12 conference and to the NCAA, saying that we don't want to play football, going to that extent of saying we will not play football if you do not meet these demands. This is crazy, guys. This is super rare. We do not see college athletes do this. We have not seen college athletes do this, and it looks like it's starting to happen. And we're going to break into that because that is an important topic. That's something that we have been talking about on this show, about the difference between what people think college sports are and what college sports actually are, especially in the football and basketball realm. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to then, if that takes us into the second quarter, if it does, we're then going to break down a little bit of what the NFL should be doing. I've been wanting to cover this for a couple weeks now, but we've gotten busy. And I like I said, I have an idea of, it's not a solution. Like I said, I don't want to call it a solution because there's nothing a solution. There's no solutions when it comes to a pandemic like this. It's just trying to figure out the best way possible. And I'm going to put out something that we've actually seen the Saints already decide to do. And we're going to see what you guys think about that. We'll either do that towards the end of the first quarter or the start of the second quarter. We're going to break down Antonio Brown and the news that is coming out about him and the suspension that has finally happened. The NFL has finally given Antonio Brown an eight-game suspension. What does that mean for him moving forward? Now that NFL football teams know, okay, we know exactly what's going to happen. See, it was always up in the air because they didn't know if they signed him. Well, shoot, how long is he going to be out for? Is he going to get suspended? Is he not going to get suspended? Is he going to be suspended a whole year, 2 years, a couple of weeks? What? Well, now there's a hard set date. We know it. 8-week suspension, and then he's able to play again. So does that make a team want to jump on him? Does that make a team want to sign him? I'm going to be honest. I'm not a fan of Antonio Brown. I mean, I want to be honest with you guys. I'm always going to be honest with you guys. I get annoyed talking about Antonio Brown. I don't think he's worth the time. But a team is going to take a chance on him. And it's a big news cycle in the news of the NFL world today. And because of that, we're going to talk about it. We will then also dive into players opting out. It's becoming more and more real, and the NFL has officially set a hard date for Thursday, August 6th, as the opt-out day. That is the final day that NFL players can opt out. We're going to discuss if this is the right thing that the NFL is doing here. Should there be a hard deadline for this type of matter? There's a lot of players opting out. We're going to dive into that. Then we're going to continue the Kayvon Division Tour. As always, that's been really fun. Been getting a lot of predictions. Getting a lot of reaction from some of the predictions I made, especially a couple hot takes in that last AFC South one. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. And then we're going to continue it to the NFC South now. My division. That's right, baby. My division. I love the NFC South. That's where my Falcons are. That's their home. That is their home, and this is the best division in football this year, and there's no doubt about it. The NFC West is really good, I get that. But this division is scary from top to bottom, and we're going to give you the predictions, as we always do. We're going to lay out each team, say where they're going to rank in the 2020 season. And then to finish the show, we're going to do something fun. We're going to break down the best rivalry games in the NFL today. You know, last podcast we talked about some of the top rivalry games in college football and how those games won't be happening because of the different schedules that these conferences have to do this year because of the pandemic. Well, it got me thinking of what type of rivalries do we still see in the NFL? Are there some out there? And I looked into it, and, you know, it's definitely not what we see in college, but there's still some serious rivalries out there, and we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to lay them out to you, and I think this is a fun topic because this brings in people from all different generations who watched games back in the day when the two teams, it was a little bit more of a rivalry to now when it's maybe not as much or vice versa. So we'll dive into that. But to start the show off, to open up the first quarter, return the kick, let's see how far we can take it. We're going to talk about the Pac-12, and this is a serious topic. This is something that has been in the works for a while when it comes to, are the players going to stand up? Are the players going to keep allowing what college sports are doing, what the NCAA is doing, what the individual conferences are doing? So we've been talking, you know, for a couple weeks now, really, about how tough it is going to be to put together a college football season. We've said numerous times that the college football season is going to be the hardest thing to put together because these kids are college kids. You know, they're not getting paid, even though they should be, but they're not, right? So but now we've seen the conferences, you know, we've seen throughout all of that noise that we've seen the conferences do really everything they can. Cut every corner, turn every cheek, try and make every possible thing happen so that they can have a college football season. So that they don't lose out on the money that they would lose out if there's no season. Well, a group of college football players that play in the Pac-12 conference have decided that enough is enough. They have come together to ask for demands. I'll go through those demands in just 1 second. Look, I've said this a couple times since I have become the host of this show. And this is actually now our 11th show. So this has easily come up about 3 or 4 times, maybe even more. But college football is devoid of leadership. They have no leadership, there is no leadership, and there hasn't been any leadership. Let me give you guys and girls an analogy here for a second, okay? People that know me will understand this pretty quickly. But I have a dog. Her name is Riley. Beautiful girl. She's so sweet. Such a sweet girl. She loves food. She loves food. She's about 10 years old now. She's a mix of a bunch of different type of dogs. We're not really sure. But she has some, lab in her, some pit in her, some boxer in her. She has this brindle color, which is so pretty. Great dog. Love her so much. But she loves food, especially treats. She's all about the treats. I mean, she's also really smart. She's one of the smartest dogs I've ever seen. Really one of the smartest animals I've ever seen. And growing up, it was me, it was my older sister Sarah, it was my mom, it was my dad, it was all of us in the house together. And when it became nighttime, we would all want Riley, our puppy at the time, to come and sleep with us, And when she's a puppy, it's so nice having her on the bed. You can cuddle with her. She's so small. And so what you could pretty much do though is when they're puppies, you can just pick them up and put them on your bed. I mean, you actually usually have to because they're not able to jump up on your bed yet. So that's what we would do. We would kind of take our dibs of who can get her on the bed first. That's who Riley would sleep with that night. Well, as she got older, she got to the point where, she could choose which bed she wanted to go to. She understood that. And she would decide which bed she would want to go sleep in. Was she feeling my bed or my sister's bed or my parents' bed, whatever. It was always, it was her choice. She would make that decision. Well, one day I decided to use a treat to get her on my bed. And it worked, obviously. I mean, she loves treats. What dog doesn't? So it worked. But see, this is the problem. Riley girl is so smart. She realized after that one time giving her a treat that she doesn't have to sleep in my bed. She can just sleep right on the floor. She can go sleep somewhere else. She doesn't have to. It's me that wants her to come up in my bed. So she learned that she has leverage. And it's going to take me giving her a treat to get her up on my bed. Well, she won. I mean, obviously she won. Now every night she gets a treat and she jumps on my bed and she sleeps there for the rest of the night. And she goes to bed happy and fat and licking her lips for her treat. And I'm over there like, well, dang, I have no leverage here. So I have to give her the treat. Well, that's exactly what is happening in college football now. For all this time, these players have been performing and making millions of dollars for their schools and for other people, but have been doing it for free. They have not been getting anything out of it. But now the players have realized without them playing, there is no college football. There are no games, which means there is no money. And I know the players have realized this before. I'm not just saying they woke up yesterday and said, oh my goodness, this is how it is. I understand that. I'm not saying that at all. But they're using the ultimate leverage. There is an ultimate leverage here. They haven't used it yet. And first of all, I just want to say this. because this comes up all the time when I have this conversation or when I overhear this conversation with people, and I hear people say this, well, they don't have student loans to pay off because they get scholarships, so it evens out, unlike the other students who are paying debts for whatever amount of years after school. That is the most dumb argument I've ever heard. The same person that is saying that is also calling the remote a clicker still. Okay? Things have changed. It does not work that way anymore. You could say that back in the day, but college sports has now become too rich. There is too much money involved, and these players are making the money because they're the production. They're the ones making the money. They're the ones on the field putting their blood, their sweat, their tears into the game to pump millions into the university. I'm sorry, but is Johnny or Lucy and I'm not going at these random students who are on campus getting an education, because that's what school's all about too. And congrats to them. But those kids that are just going there to get a communications degree or an accounting degree, they're not making money for the school. They're not making millions of dollars for the school. So that argument about they should be doing this or they should be happy with what's happening because they get a free education is bullcrap. And I'm sick of when I hear people say that. And again, it's usually people that still don't want to see change. People that call the remote a clicker. That is over. Times are over with that. These players put too much money in this school to not see some of this money back. So I wanted to quickly get into that. And I'm sorry to go off topic there, but I hear it all the time, and it's ridiculous. So, back to what's happening here with these players. All right, a group of Pac-12 football players decided to come together and make a stand. They have decided to take that first step of going against the NCAA, and to do that, they're starting by going against their conference, the Pac-12 conference. So this group of football players that play in the Pac-12 conference, they came together and they wrote an article in the Players Tribune. For those that don't know what the Players Tribune is, just real quick to lay it out, it's pretty much a media outlet for players. Players will go on there, they'll write articles about really anything. It gives these players a place to express themselves in a formal journalism type way, which I find very cool. So this article written by a group of players that are in the Pac-12 is entitled #WeAreUnited. And in this article, they go through a bunch of things that they want to happen or that they want changed. And they actually go far enough to state that if these don't happen, they won't play. They put that in there, which is a huge step. So some of these things they're asking for has to do with coronavirus and such as health and safety protocols, like player-approved health and safety standards to address COVID-19. They also asked to preserve all sports. So you know how we're seeing a lot of these schools like Stanford, for instance, cut a bunch of programs, like a bunch of different sports programs. Well, these players are asking to stop doing that and to instead decrease some of the salaries of these head coaches and these administrators. They even say decrease the salary of the Pac-12 commissioner, Larry Scott. They actually say that in there, drastically cut his salary. They're saying you can do that, which helps keep some of these programs around. They go on to say in racial injustice in college sports and society, such as form a permanent civic engagement task force made up of our leaders, experts of our choice, and university and conference administrators to address outstanding issues such as racial injustice in college sports and in society. And then they also go for economic freedom and medical coverage, which includes medical insurance selected by players for sports-related medical conditions, including COVID-19 illness, to cover 6 years after college athletics eligibility ends, name, image, and likeness rights. And then they end it with asking for fair market rights and freedoms, which essentially they're saying they want 50% of the revenue created by each sport, by their sport. So I know that can get really confusing. There's a lot of stuff there clearly, so stay with me here because I'm going to explain it in smaller forms here. And it's really important, so just hang on real quick. So this is the thing about what the Pac-12 is doing, the players are doing. First of all, I love it. Like I said, you really have to give these players credit for willing to step up and do something like this. This is not easy to do as an athlete, let alone a college athlete. I mean, this is the first time it's happened. It takes a lot of courage, and I give the players credit for that. And honestly, most of what they are asking for is very fair. Like, these are realistic wants. Or actually, let me take that back. Everything they are asking for is fair and very easy to make happen, especially the stuff like medical coverage. I mean, come on, that makes complete sense, especially during these COVID-19 times where they're asking to put their bodies and their health out on the line to go out there and play, and they don't get paid to do that. Now, you might say 6 years of medical coverage after school is a lot, and I personally don't think so, but that's fine. And you know, the whole thing is they're starting high because when you negotiate, you start high because you know you're going to move down at some point. Some other things that are completely doable is the racial injustice. I mean, that should already be happening by these conferences. There's no doubt about that. So that is something that should happen. The name, image, and likeness should have happened forever ago. And real quick, for those that don't understand what that is, these players are saying they should be able to get paid for their likeness, which is literally what America is. If somebody wants to pay you because of your talents, you have the freedom here in America to do that. These college players do not. These college athletes do not, which is absolutely preposterous. I understand that it's in the works now to make that happen for these players, but it should have been happening years ago. So all of those are things that these players should easily be able to get and are completely fair. The part where the NCAA is going to look at and just laugh, to be frank, to keep it simple, is when players are asking for 50% of the revenue. The Pac-12 conference and the NCAA aren't even going to answer that part. There's just no way. They're not even going to confront that part of this. Let me be clear. I fully believe the players deserve a revenue split. But we all know how the NCAA works. And they are in their office right now, probably sitting in their super nice fancy leather chair, drinking some nice scotch because the money's going to them and not the players. And they're saying, over my dead body will this happen. It's just not going to happen. And this is why. They're asking for a revenue split for athletes in their respective sports. So college football players are asking for a revenue split for college football. And they want basketball to happen for basketball, baseball to happen for baseball. The problem with that is majority of college sports are Olympic sports. And majority of them actually lose money. Actually, all of them pretty much lose money besides basketball and football. So that's just not going to happen. There's no way around that, and I understand that. But they should get the rest of this stuff. They really should. And hopefully, one day, the revenue split will happen too. Hopefully. This is the problem, though. The players have a lot of leverage here. They really do. There's no doubt about that. But the only leverage they have is to sit out of the game, and that's the problem. Because while that is a huge leverage, it is a very big bargaining chip. I mean, if they decide not to play, then the schools have to listen. Because if there's no games, it means there will be no money. But the problem is, it takes everyone. Because there are so many kids on a college football team that if a wide receiver decides to sit out, well, there is another one sitting there right behind him, dying to take his turn and to show that he can play. If an offensive lineman sits out, there's another one behind him that would love to take his spot. And this isn't just this goes for star quarterbacks as well. We've seen this. If a quarterback decides to sit out, guess what, buddy? There's a 5-star quarterback right behind him that would be dying to play. You get what I'm saying? As long as this is the case, then when someone threatens to sit out, the head coach is going to look at that player and say, bye, I have someone that can replace you. Have a nice life. It's harsh, but it's the truth. It's going to take the entire team to cooperate. It's going to take two teams coming together and right before a game deciding not to take the field, deciding not to play. That's the ultimate leverage. And if you really want change, it's going to take going to that extent. It's going to take boycotting. And it's going to take doing that at the highest level, like not playing in a Final Four game, making it to the Final Four and then literally sitting out of that game. Look, I know that sounds harsh, but for the longest time, it has essentially been free labor. And to change that, it's going to take shaking things up at the highest level when the most people are watching. And players understand that. They do. And I think with COVID-19, it has made it even more clear for these players because they are seeing the extent that these conferences are going to so that they can have a season, so that they can make some money. But without them, there is no season. There is no revenue to generate. And players are saying, here is what we want. Here is what we are demanding. Let's take this to the negotiating table. Yeah, we might not receive everything we want, but we just want a seat at the right table. We want to have a say. And I love it, and I respect these players that are standing up, and that's how it's going to work. And now it's time for the powers that be, for the men and women up top, to decide if they want to be on the right side of history or not. It's in their hands. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, entering into quarter number 2, what do you think? Did we run it back? Did we run it back, or did we get tackled at the 20? I think we ran it back. When we come out of the first quarter going into quarter number 2, we're going to talk about Antonio Brown and the situation there, players opting out, and then stick around because you remember the best rivalry games in the NFL comes up at the end of quarter number 3. Stick around. We'll be right back. GSMC Football Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
This is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. You know who it is. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We are delighted, we are honored, and we are super pumped up to bring some good content to you guys today as we enter into the second quarter, baby. Second quarter, we're almost at halftime. What do you think? How are we doing? We just had a great conversation about the Pac-12 and college sports as a whole. And I know it seems like lately I've really been picking on college sports. And look, I love college sports. You know, I live for Saturdays waking up for college football and you know, college basketball, college baseball. NC State has a great college baseball program. So we'll go watch those games here and there. Look, college sports they're amazing. You know, people love college football and college basketball and other things, and that's why these stadiums sell out, and that's why there's so much money involved. But at some point, we have to look at it and say, things just aren't fair anymore, okay? That whole argument of they're getting a free education is just, there's no credibility in that argument anymore. There's no stance for that argument. There's too much money involved in this business, because that's what it is, where it's just to the point where I'm glad that these players are making a stand. The problem is, though, as we went over it, how far are they willing to go? And that's the question that we always have to ask when other players or just in life in general, when someone is willing to make a stand because they believe that they're better than this, or they believe that they deserve something more. How far are you willing to take that stand? And hopefully, before you make that stand, you think that question, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to take a stand and then 2 seconds later or 2 days later or 2 weeks later, you say, you know what? Practice is starting. I'm going to lose my job. I got to get back into this. I can't lose my job. And we're humans, and that's probably going to happen to some of these students, and that's fine. I do not know if I would have the courage to do what they're doing. I really don't know if I would, because all I would think about is, man, I want to play college. I want to play sports. I want to help my team out. I want to be on TV. I want to showcase my skills. And that's what the NCAA, that's what the Pac-12, and that's what all these other conferences are hoping happens, that these kids just say, you know what, we're outmatched here and we're going to have to go back. The question is, does this start a movement? The question is, it's just the Pac-12 right now, right? Well, does a group from the SEC come together? Does the group from the ACC come together? Does the group from the Big 10, Big 12 come together? Does this start becoming a trend? Do more students start to stand up and say, hey, let's follow along. There's something here that's sticking, and we need to push it, because this might be the time to do it. With everything going on in the world right now, and with COVID happening, it just feels like they're able to use that leverage more than ever. And now look, things are not going to get done right away. That's not going to happen. But it can start right now. And these kids deserve more than what they're getting, especially if they're going to go out there and put their bodies on the line and put their health on the line and put their friends' and families' health on the line to go and play football. For what? Hopes of getting drafted in the near future or the far future, depending on what grade you are in? I mean, what is that? I never know what's going to happen with tomorrow. We see that every single day. And, this is a real thing happening in college sports, and all I can do is applaud these students for taking this stand, because it's courageous. Like I said, it's courageous for any athlete to do this, let alone a college athlete who hasn't really even made a name for themselves yet. And what do I mean by that? Yeah, we might know some of these athletes' names, but what does that have to do with anything? They haven't made a living. They haven't made money in their pocket. They don't have a savings account. I mean, I don't know these people, but maybe, their parents do, or maybe some of them work jobs, but not to the point where they can say, hey, if I don't play football again, I'm going to be okay. They'll go on and they'll finish school and all of that stuff. But what I'm saying is they're not at their career right now where they can just sit back and say, hey, I can take this stand. I can take this stand, and if it ends up bad for me, well, so on. I'll move on. And if they will end up moving on. They'll finish school and all that stuff. But they still have stuff that they can play for. And that's what they're saying. They want to be able to play, but they want it to be fair. They want it to be very, very fair. And right now, it's not even close to being fair. And I think we all can agree with that. So you have to applaud the Pac-12. You have to applaud, the Pac-12 students and college football players that are doing this. And the only question that we can ask from here is, how far are they willing to go? Are they really willing to boycott? And are others willing to join them? Because like I said, there's 100+ kids on these college football teams, some of them. If one kid sits out, there's another kid that is biting the bullet to get into his starting spot and to showcase his skills. Everyone has to be on board to make this work if they really want it to happen. And we'll see. So go check out that part of this podcast, the first quarter that we like to call it. It's a football podcast. We want to break it down into a football themed segments. So now that we're entering the second quarter, now that we're here in the second quarter, we're going to do a couple different things. But remember, coming at us at the fourth quarter, the fourth and final quarter, where we usually like to pull out the clutch gene, hit you guys with the fun stuff. We're going to do the best rivalries in the NFL today. Remember, this came up from last show. Last show, we were talking about all the stuff going on with college football and how these conferences are going conference-only games, which means we're not going to get those really good rivalries that we get every year when the ACC plays the SEC, Florida, Florida State, Clemson, South Carolina, stuff like that. But it made us think, well, what are the rivalries in the NFL that we're going to get, huh? What are those? We know Pittsburgh, Baltimore. What else do we have? And always, you guys can always tweet us in your thoughts at Kayvon_sports, at Kayvon_sports, or hit us up on the company Twitter page at GSMC_football, at GSMC_football. And as I always do, I will read out who said what, and give you guys a little shout out there, and then we can debate it. So we'll get into that in the fourth quarter. Now, though, to finish out this second quarter here, I want to talk about what's going on with the NFL and the opt-out period and everything that's involved in this right now, okay? Things are clearly starting to heat up in the NFL, right? I mean, it's August 4th. We would be 1 week away. I mean, Thursday. This Thursday would have been the Hall of Fame preseason game. That's so crazy, guys. This Thursday would have been the preseason game if the preseason didn't get canceled. So we're right around the edge. We're right around the corner. And I hear people saying, why is all this happening now? Why are the players doing this now? Why is this taking so long? Why did it take so long? And well, from the NFL and the NFLPA side of things, a lot of stuff should have started way earlier. So I don't have an answer for that. I don't know why we've talked about this, that it took this long for the NFL to get things going. I honestly think that the NFL thought by the time it gets to them, it's going to be okay. And that's a terrible way to think. But I think that's how they went about it. But they've gotten things straight. The NFL and the NFLPA has come together, and they set terms on an opt-out date. And they set it for this Thursday, August 6th, is the hard deadline for the opt-out date. So things are starting to get real about that, all right? Players are looking at the situation. They're seeing what's happening in baseball, who is just like their sport in terms of traveling, but they don't touch and tackle each other really for 4 straight quarters. And teams are still having outbreaks. Players see this stuff. They follow this stuff. A lot of them watch this stuff. And a lot of them don't want to deal with it. Well, the NFL has now made, as I said, and the NFLPA came together, and they made an official update. This Thursday is when things end. That's the hard deadline of when you as a player have to say, are you playing this year or are you not? We now have 40-plus players that have opted out of the 2020-2021 season. I'm not going to lie, and I know that in retrospect, that's not that many players when you look at the amount of players that are on each team. But I did not think that we would have this many players opt out. I really didn't. And again, I don't think that this is, I know that there's not that many big names, even though we are starting to see some, but still, I really did not think that the majority of these players would opt out. I didn't think we would get up to 40 or over 50, which it looks like it's going to happen. I thought, these players, they love playing the game, and I'm not saying the ones that are opting out don't love playing the game. I just thought with what's saying with the money that comes in, the amount of money their paychecks are, it just felt that I just personally thought most of these players are going to play. And like I said, I applaud anybody that has the courage to say I'm not doing it this year. It's just not worth it. You will not hear criticism from me to when it comes to someone that wants to play or when it comes to someone that doesn't want to play. You make your own decision. Either decision takes a lot of guts. Either decision takes a lot of guts. And I applaud you on either one. And it just shows that the amount of people that are opting out, how serious this virus is. I mean, it really shows, guys, we're 6 months into this virus, and we are still, we're still in a bad situation here in the United States. And the NFL players see that. So the NFL had a recent deadline for players to opt out, and they're moving it. They first wanted to move it up a little bit, so all this stuff, but now they set it for Thursday, right? Well, Devin McCourty plays for the New England Patriots. He came out and essentially bashed the NFL for this. McCourty said, I think this is an absolute joke. I think that this is a joke. The NFL is changing the opt-out period mainly because they don't want to see guys continue to opt out. And that's what he said. And I quote, that's exactly, I read it off the tweet that he said. Look, McCourty is right about this. This is wrong. That the NFL is trying to put a hard deadline on these decisions. This is a pandemic. Players don't know what they want to do yet, and really, how could they know? It's wrong to put a hard deadline on this, and I think we will start to hear more players speak out and agree with McCourty saying this. I really do. Let's just break it down here. What is Devin McCourty really saying? He's saying that there needs to be clarity. He's saying that we need to understand how this is going to work. Don't rush us. Don't try and push us forward. You, NFL and NFLPA, just deal with the protocols. Figure out how you're going to keep us as healthy as possible. How we're going to move forward and try and get an entire season in. And let us decide if we want to do that or not. If we feel safe enough to do that or not. Look, I understand why the NFL is doing this. They don't want players to take advantage of it. You know, we saw Jonas Cespedes of the Mets, who is having a really bad season, decide to opt out 2 weeks into the MLB season. And that guy has just, I don't even know where to start with him anyways, but he did that. He used that to his advantage. He used COVID-19 opt-out to his advantage to opt out 2 weeks into a season that he clearly did not want to play in. So I get that, and I think the NFL says, we don't want to deal with this. We don't want that to happen. But to me, none of that matters to the extent of the importance of this virus and making sure players have a chance to make the best decision. And also, you just don't want a situation where the players are feeling like they are being rushed. That's just not a good situation. It's unfair. It's unfair to put them in that situation, in that position. Look, I think the majority of players are going to play this year. I really do. I think the majority of players are going to accept the risk, and I think they're going to play. Most of them are already in camp and already accepting the risk. But let the rest that are not sure about it take their time. Let us get them into the facility and see what we are looking at as far as how our practice is going to look, how our meetings going to look. Let us understand how all of this looks first. What happens if I test positive during week 1? Where do I go? Do I go to a hotel? What happens to me? What happens to me if my position coaches test positive? Let us understand the insides and out of this. Because all in all, the majority of players are going to play. They're going to go out there and give it a shot. Let's just make sure they feel comfortable as possible doing it. Obviously, in this environment, no one is going to feel 100% safe. But let them see what they are fully up against. Give them the proper time to make that decision. Also, I have heard people saying that players and agents will use this opt-out deadline as a way to get leverage for more money. For example, my player will opt out if you don't add some guaranteed money or signing bonus, whatever, to his contract. Call me naive if you want, but I don't see players doing that. I understand some agents are very callous and it's money, money, money with them, and that's all they think about, money and only money. But I just don't see players pushing that, not in a time like this. And again, I could be naive and wrong, but I don't see it happening. But if I heard that, then maybe the NFL has heard that, and that's another reason why they're trying to do this. Or honestly, maybe the NFL is just worried because they see the amount of players opting out, and I think they had the same thought process as me, that this is way more players than we thought, than we predicted. And I get that. I understand why the NFL is trying to do this, trying to put this hard deadline on it, but this is something that is too serious to try and slap a hard deadline on, in my opinion. It just is. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. Hope you guys are all having a great day. Sports are back. It's so funny. It's a good thing you guys aren't listening to me live because the Hurricanes are playing right now. I've got basketball on. I've got the Hurricanes on. They just scored to go up 2-1, and they're looking to sweep the Rangers here. And it's just, I just kind of want to break down the game to you guys right now. So it's a good thing we're not live. Otherwise, I might kind of go off in that tangent real quick. Now, before we go into halftime here and enter in that third quarter, I want to give you guys an idea of what I think the NFL could possibly do. And again, this is not a solution. This is just something that that I think can kind of make sense. And I understand there's going to be a lot of people against it, and probably the players are going to be against it. But the NFL needs to take advantage of the fact that they have the luxury of watching how MLB and other sports are doing this. All right? They have the luxury of seeing what is the difference between a bubble sport and a non-bubble sport. And I get this. I get that the NFL cannot do a bubble like basketball or hockey. There's too many players, too many teams, all of that stuff. But to see MLB having these outbreaks over and over, and they play a sport where they don't even touch each other, where they can go an entire game without touching each other possibly. Now we're talking about football, a sport that is full on contact. You're not just touching other players, you're hitting them. You're hitting multiple players at one time. You're getting hit by multiple players at one time. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to think that this could maybe work without any teams getting the virus. Now, the one thing that the NFL really has going for them is that they don't play 7-8 games a week like the MLB does. They play one game a week. So if they were to have to suspend and push back a game, that's a possibility. As long as it's an outlier here or there. They can't be doing that for every team every week. What I think the NFL should do is each team should create their own bubble. And you say, well, what does that even mean? It means spending a lot of money and making a lot of sacrifices, just like the NBA and NHL owners are doing. Each team will reserve an entire hotel. Yes, an entire hotel, just like the NBA is doing. They will reserve an entire hotel for the team. The team will go from the hotel to the practice, right back to the hotel. Room service will bring the food, nowhere else. Now, when it's time for games to start, each team will charter their own plane. They'll fly into the other team's city. They will go into that other team's hotel. So, for example, if the Panthers are flying in to play the Falcons, they will go into the Falcons bubble, their bubble hotel that they have rented out because it's a huge hotel. They'll stay there if they have to stay there for the night. They'll play that game. And from that hotel, they'll go straight to the stadium. From the stadium, they'll go straight back to their charter flight. Boom. Nothing in between. They understand where the players are. They know that players aren't going out to coffee shops like the Miami players were and all that stuff. Now, I get this. I understand that this means players will not be able to be with their family members. I think that the NFL is smart enough where they can make some type of loophole just like the NBA is. Well, once we get 5 weeks in, then family members can start coming and staying in the hotel with them. Something like that can work out. Again, I know this isn't going to happen, but look, we see the Saints doing it right now. The Saints rented out 4 or 5 floors on a hotel for their players to go stay there after practice if they want to, after training camp and all that stuff. Sean Payton came out and said, look, the NFL is clearly going full speed ahead, so we want to be prepared so we can have a good season. So they rented out 4 or 5 floors, and they said, hey, go straight to the hotel. You don't have to go back to your families. You don't have to go out or other places where you don't feel comfortable. Go straight to the hotel, stay in your room, order room service. Don't open the door for anyone. Let them leave the food behind the door. Once they leave, go grab it. That can work. The Saints are thinking ahead. The Saints are looking at that. Again, it's going to take sacrifices no matter what. There's a reason why the NHL and the NBA are doing so well right now. Knock on wood, but we are sitting here watching games right now, watching multiple games at a time, having games from noon to midnight every single day. They are giving us that luxury again because they're taking sacrifices. The players are making sacrifices by not seeing their families. The owners are making sacrifices by spending money for the bubble. Everyone is making a sacrifice, but they're doing it for their sport. They're doing it for the people. They're doing it to give this country hope. And they're doing it so that they can have a legitimate season where they crown a legitimate champion. Everybody wants that. We don't want a diluted season. We don't want a season where we say, oh yeah, the Chiefs won again, but guess what? Half the teams got sick. So they really didn't even get to play that many good teams. Because everyone was playing backups. If the NFL is going to do it, which they are, they got to do it right. And 32 bubbles to me is not a bad idea if people are willing to give up sacrifices and spend money. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. We are going into halftime now, of course, with a big lead after those two bomb segments. And when we come back, we're going to dive into the NFC South, baby. The division tour rolls on. Is the NFC South the best division in football? Could we have 3 playoff teams? Is there a Super Bowl contender in that mix? Stay tuned, you'll find out right after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We are coming out of halftime on a strong note. Just dove into some really good topics for quarter 1, quarter 2 that got us a big lead. And now let's try and finish this thing off and pull out the clutch gene as we head into quarter 3 and then quarter number 4. I want to thank everyone for listening. This show is not this show without the great listeners. So wherever you are, however you're listening, whatever time it is, we thank you. We thank you so much. We just talked about really what the NFL situation is looking at right now. You know, we have a lot of players opting out, 45, which, like I said, in the realm of things, it really doesn't look like a lot, but I didn't think we'd get to over 20. I really didn't. And I think by Thursday, when that hard deadline comes, I think we could be around 60 players. Now, we don't have that big of names yet. I mean, we do have C.J. Mosley on the Jets, who is a huge name. I mean, C.J. Mosley's set to make, I want to say, $15 million this year. He signed a massive deal with the Jets last offseason, coming over from the Raiders. And I mean, he didn't even play last year because he was hurt. Yeah, so last year he signed last offseason, he signed a 5-year, $85 million deal, annual salary of $17 million. He was hurt the entire year pretty much. Because when he was in the game, the offense was much better. So he was hurt like the entire year. And when he was in there, they were better. But I think he only played like 3 games. And then now he's not even going to play this year, which again, I'm not criticizing him for that. I'm just saying when you look at his contract in perspective now, the Jets are probably sitting there scratching their head like, what the heck? I mean, he's walking away from $17 million this year. That's a lot of money to walk away from, especially someone that's only in their second year of their big deal. You know? This is his big deal after coming off his rookie years in Baltimore. This is his big deal, and he's saying, "Hey, money's not worth it to me. Money's just not worth it to me," and I have to respect that. He says this virus is too scary, and I'm not willing to risk it or my family. Put my family in that situation. But that's a lot of money to pass up, and that's probably the biggest name that we've seen so far. I mean, we've seen Dante Hightower, who's a great player, has done some amazing things for the Patriots, but he's starting to get a little bit older. So this CJ Mosley with that $17 million a year, that's where I'm shocked, because that's why I didn't see players like that with that type of contract starting to opt out. And when you see that, I think the NFL started to say, whoa. We need to put a deadline on this right now, because we didn't see this coming either. We didn't see this many players. And before we start getting some bigger names start coming out and saying it, we need to put a deadline on it. And I think that's what the NFL is saying. And it makes sense to me by the NFL, but I also think that it's not fair. I think it's very hard to do that during a pandemic, to try and put a time limit, to try and put a hard deadline on when these players have to make a decision on something that could really impact their life. To the point of, we don't know. We don't know the long-term effects of COVID yet. That's the scary part of all this. And I think sometimes, again, we forget that these players, they're humans, and they think and feel the same way we do, and they don't want to deal with that. And I applaud them for that. And I also applaud the ones that are playing too, because that takes a lot of courage as well. It really does. And my whole thing is, when are we going to get to the point where we say, is this going to be a downplayed season? Is this going to be a less competitive season because we have players getting COVID left and right? We just saw Doug Peterson, the second head coach other than Sean Payton, to have the virus. Are we going to start seeing that through the season? Because if we start seeing, I don't want to name names and put that into the universe and jinx them, but if we start seeing, quarterbacks and big receivers and big defensive tackles start getting the virus, and these games are being played without these guys, can you really say that the team won that? The team beat this other team, even though the other team didn't have their star quarterback, their star receiver, their star defensive end? That's when I start to worry. And we'll see how that goes, and hopefully the NFL has an answer for that. Now, we are going to keep going on with our division tour, though, because we do believe a season's going to happen, and whatever that season looks like, we got to make some predictions, because I want you guys to hold me accountable when I'm wrong, and I want myself to be able to brag when I'm right. And that's how it is, and you guys would do the same thing if you had your own show. So, I know how it is. All right, so we're going to the NFC South now. Let's get right into it. You know how we do. The predictions within the predictions. The NFC South, the best division in football. That's what it is. It's the best division in football. I know a lot of people want to debate that, but I'm sorry. This is the best division in football, and there's not a doubt about it. I get the NFC South. The NFC West is really good, but I don't think anything has the star power and the firepower like this division does. So, let's start with it. The best coach. The best coach award is going to go to Sean Payton here. Look, even me as a Falcons fan, I can't look past this. Sean Payton is extremely innovative. He has a great offensive system, one of the best offensive coaches in the league. He does a great job using different pieces like Taysom Hill. And now he definitely has some flaws. Don't get me wrong. He had a string of rough seasons when they weren't drafting well or when they don't have a good defense. But winning the division the last 3 years in a row, it's hard to pick anyone else other than Sean Payton. It is. Sean Payton has been at it for a long time in this league now, and he won a Super Bowl back in 2009. He's a really good head coach. I will say, though, that I really like all the head coaches in this division. I mean, Bruce Arians is a phenomenal coach. He's done some great things when he was the head coach in Orlando. Dan Quinn took the Falcons to the Super Bowl. He has shown he knows how to coach and can coach really well, but he's had 2 really down seasons, which has put him on the hot seat, unfortunately. And Matt Rule's going to be a rookie coach, so the jury's still out on him, but I love what he did in college. I love what he did in college, and I think he will definitely translate to the NFL because he's a pure football coach and he's the leader, and you can tell that players gravitate towards him. So I like him, but Sean Payton wears the crown for the 2020 season as the best coach in the NFC South. Best QB, I got to go with Tom Brady here. Look, I know he's 43 years old, and I know everyone's like, oh, I know you want to go with Matt Ryan. And you know what? I did want to go with Matt Ryan, but I'm fair, guys. I'm fair. Yes, I love my Falcons. I talk about my Falcons, but I'm not going to pick someone. I'm not going to pick Matt Ryan if there's someone that's better than Matt Ryan at this moment. Now, next year, Matt Ryan's going to take that crown because I think that Brady has one more big year in him. I think he could play good next year too, but I think this is going to be his big year where he could be in the MVP conversation. And I think Drew Brees is retiring after this year. So I think Matt Ryan I know Matt Ryan will take that crown next year, but for now, it's Tom Brady for me. Tom Brady's wearing the crown this year, and I know a lot of people want to say, hey, but towards the end of last year, he was trending down. He didn't look good. He lost that home playoff opener against the Titans. He was bad in that game. But all in all, he still went 12-4 with a JV. I mean, honestly, with a JV wide receiving core around him, other than Edelman. I mean, he had nobody. And that's impressive. And now you put his talent with guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, O.J. Howard. That is a recipe for a really good season by Tom Brady, and I see it happening. Just like the head coach, though, this is a really good QB division. I think it's the best QB division in the league. You got the Brady, the Breezes, you got Matt Ryan, and you got Teddy Bridgewater, who I really like as well. Best wide receiver, Julio Jones. Look, I know a lot of people are going to say this should be Michael Thomas, and I wouldn't say that you're wrong. I wouldn't say that's an outlandish the comment or anything. Michael Thomas is a monster. He's a top 5 receiver in the league. He's a beast. There's no doubt about that. But Julio possesses more weapons. In other words, defensive backs have a harder time guarding Julio because he can do it all. He can do it all. He can beat you over the middle. He can beat you over the top. He can get a ton of yards after catch. Michael Thomas can do a lot, but he's not as fast. He's not as physical. He's more of a slant guy, and that's why he catches so many balls. Julio possesses it all. He is the best receiver in the NFC South. Best running back, it's Christian McCaffrey, hands down. Look, you've got some great running backs in this division. Alvin Kamara, I like to call him the Septipod. He can do it all. He catch it, run it, everything. Todd Gurley, 2 years ago, he was in the MVP conversation. I know he's been down last year, but still amazing running back. But Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in the league. He can catch it. He can run it up the middle. He can run it outside the tackles. He can put his shoulder down and run through you. He can run past you. He can catch better than a lot of wide receivers can catch. This guy is a monster. Christian McCaffrey is holding that crown, and he's holding that crown for many years to come. Best tight end. This one was tough for me. Excuse me. At first, I was like, there's not really that many notable tight ends when it comes to this division. And then I realized, well, Gronk is back. And I've got to go with Gronk here because of what Brady has done in the past and with Gronk and the reputation that they have together, I think that the connection that they have together, I think they're going to show us, they're going to start off right where they left off before Gronk retired. And I know O.J. Howard's there. I know Hayden Hurst is there. I know Jared Goff is there. Jared Cook is there. Rob Gronkowski is the best tight end in this division, even after taking a year off. And I don't think it's that close. Best offense. I wanted to go Atlanta here, but I just couldn't. I really like Atlanta's in their high-octane offense, but I had to go with Tampa Bay. When your offense is top 5 in the league with Jameis Winston, what's it going to be like with Brady behind center? Number 1, most likely. It's Brady. It's this Tampa Bay offense is the best. And then defense, it's the Saints. This is an offensive division. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but the Saints do have the pieces on the defensive side of the ball. They have Cam Jordan. They have Marcus Davenport. They have Marshawn Lattimore, Their defense isn't anything spectacular or anything like that, but it's been the best defense in this division for a while, and it will continue that way next year as well. All right, now let's get into the breakdowns. Here we go. The Carolina Panthers, head coach Matt Rule, 2019 record 5-11. The Panthers are in an interesting spot here because what they did this offseason, many would say they're rebuilding, right? I mean, they moved on from Coach Ron Rivera, who's been there since 2011 and has had a lot of success, I'd add. They move on from their star quarterback that has been there in 2011 as well, and Cam Newton, who won an MVP and has had a lot of success. Their star linebacker, and honestly one of the best linebackers that I've ever seen play in Luke Kuechly, is retiring and did retire, so he's gone. So you're sitting there saying, whoa, like, they've lost 3 of their biggest pieces that they've had in the last 8+ years. The thing is, and they will. They will be rebuilding. They'll be rebuilding slowly. When you lose 3 pieces like that, it's tough to just come out and make the playoffs or have a great season. So I'm not saying that they're going to do that. But they have some very good pieces on this team, especially offensively. I really like what they have going on with their wide receiver. They have DJ Moore. They have speedster Curtis Samuel, who's been trending up. DJ Moore's had a great sophomore year last year, was in the top 5 in receiving yards out of all the wide receivers out there. They have the best running back in the league, like we just said, in Christian McCaffrey, the do-it-all type back, which will be huge for Teddy Bridgewater. And then speaking of Teddy Bridgewater, they brought him in this offseason after he took the Saints 5-0 when Breeze got hurt last year. And I personally really like Bridgewater. I think he's a starting QB in this league. I think he has a lot of promise, but I think he'll need help. And I like Matt Rule. I think he was a really good coach at Baylor. I think he's a leader. I think players are going to want to play for him. And I think he's an X and O type of guy, and he will get this team rolling. It's not going to happen as early as next year because their defense has a lot of question marks. They were the first team ever to use every single draft pick on one side of the ball. They did that for defense because their defense has a lot of issues. And their defense is going to need help. And because of that, they're not going to be as good. But what they're going to do is they're going to upset a lot of people. They're going to play spoiler alert to a lot of teams. So Vegas has the Panthers at 5.5 wins on the 2020 season. I think they're spot on with that. That number 5 is the number that I'm looking at. I think the Panthers win 5 games exactly. And again, this team is going to be a team that everyone's going to have to take serious. It's going to be a team where no one's going to be able to just put their head down and say this is easy and mark that off as a win on their schedule. But with the new coach, the new quarterback, and the limited COVID-19 offseason, more than 5 wins is going to be hard to happen with this team. Lock it in. Give me the under 5.5 on the Panthers this upcoming season. Now, the New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton, head coach, 2019 record, 13-3. The Saints are another interesting team here. The reigning NFC South champs, 3 years in a row now, looking to make it 4 as Drew Brees tries to retire on a high note here. The good old cliche of retiring into the sunset. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen that often. You know, we've seen it happen to Peyton Manning. We've seen it happen to John Elway, but it doesn't happen that often. And I think this team has the pieces to make that run, to make it happen for Drew Brees. There's no doubt about it. Offensively, they added Emmanuel Sanders to an already stacked group with Alvin Kamara, which is a dynamic Swiss Army knife type guy. They have Michael Thomas, who broke Marvin Harrison's record for most catches in a season last year and has really emerged as a really good superstar receiver in this league. They then have their leader on defense in Cam Jordan, who talks a lot of trash. They upgraded their linebacker core when they drafted Zach Braun out of Wisconsin, who fell to them in the third round, and many people thought that this was the steal of the draft. He should play nicely alongside Kiko Alonso. And then they helped out their secondary by bringing in Malcolm Jenkins through free agency. Look, I know all this sounds positive, and it all is positive, so it's weird for me to switch it here. But there is something about losing the way the Saints have the last 3 years in the playoffs. 3 years ago they lost to Minnesota in that Stephon Diggs miracle last-second catch. The year before that, we all know what happened with the refs missing an easy pass interference call, even though they still had overtime to try and win that game and couldn't get it done then. But still, it was a bad missed call by the refs. And then last year, they go 13-3, have a awesome season, and then lose in the wild card round at home to the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins, who hasn't been able to win a big game like that until now. So I'm sorry, but I'm someone that believes eventually all of this adds up and just wipes you out. There's only so much you can say to pump everyone up and to keep giving it another hoorah and get revenge. The last 2 years, Drew Brees has been on the decline. He's looked worse and worse down the stretch of the season. He can't hit the deep ball anymore. And I think the Saints and Sean Payton clearly know that, because that's why they've been going out and signing Teddy Bridgewater last year and then signing Jameis Winston this year. And don't give me that talk of, Taysom Hill's going to be the quarterback. If Taysom Hill is going to be the quarterback, they wouldn't be going out and signing these really good, capable backup quarterbacks in Teddy Bridgewater and then now this year Jameis Winston. Why would they do that if they had faith in Taysom Hill to be able to take over? Taysom Hill is special because of the role that he is in. He's special because he doesn't play every down. He's special because the defense has no idea what he's going to do, because he comes in during surprise formats and systems and surprise times during the game to go in a different position, whether that's behind the center, out wide, in the running back position, whatever. He does that, and that's why it keeps the defense on their feet. I don't think he is the franchise guy that's going to take over Drew Brees, because they're not showing us that by the moves that they're making. So I'm worried about Drew Brees. Look, Vegas has the win total for the Saints at 10.5. This is a massive win total. It's too much for my liking. Like I said, they have the pieces, they have the talent, but I think Drew Brees is going to allow Father Time to show. And I don't think Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill is good enough to come in and fill in that role if Brees was potentially to not show up the way he has been of late. And if he keeps declining as the season goes, I think that's going to happen. I'm locking in the under at 10.5, and I'm taking this to the bank right away. I think that they could win 9 games. I think that they could even win 10 games, but I don't think they're going over that 10-win season. That's my lock. Smash it in, grab a hammer, grab a nail, lock, take it to the bank. You're good to go. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. We're going to take a quick break. Then when we come back, there's 2 teams left. There's the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I told you that the Saints are going to win 10 games or 9 games, but they're not going over that. So does that mean one of these teams is going to take the division crown? Who's it going to be? Find out right after this.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Throw up the four fingers. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami, and we are heading into quarter number 4. So throw up the four fingers. Quarter 1, 2, 3 are done. Hope you've enjoyed the topics. Hope you enjoyed the content so far. And if you're still listening to us, you're still hanging around into this fourth quarter now, we truly appreciate it because we've got a great treat for you guys to end the show, to end the game, and to put another W in the win column here. So as you guys know, we talked about what's going on in the Pac-12. We talked about with the students stepping up and saying they want some demands for this season with COVID-19, and then they went on to talk about just in general for what they do with their athletes as college athletes and the money they make for the conference and for their schools and all that stuff. We then went into the NFL and everything going on with these players opting out, some bigger names coming in like CJ Mosley, some big names getting the actual virus like Doug Peterson. Our best wishes to him, and that he's okay and that he's safe. And then we broke down the division. We did the Kayvon division tour. And, once again, I told you guys we were going to talk Antonio Brown, and we didn't. It's just not an exciting topic to me. Like I said, the guy's going to play again, but he just is annoying. He really is. And he's done. And look, I'm all for second chances. This is going to be more than a second chance for him, but I'm all for giving him a second chance and seeing how things go. And we will get to that topic maybe next show if we have time for it. But we've been continuing the Kayvon Division Tour. It's been a big hit. People are loving the predictions. People are writing them down. They're ready to throw it back in my face if I get them wrong. And we just went through the first two teams, the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints, and we hit on unders. We're saying unders for both of those. Vegas has the win total for the Panthers at 5.5, and then the win total for the Saints at 10.5. See, I'm taking the under on both of those. Look, again, the Panthers are going to play spoiler. They've got too many good pieces on offense for them to be a 2-14 or a 3-13 win team. That's just not happening. I understand they have a rookie head coach in Matt Rule, who I didn't mention, but there was a bidding war for Matt Rule between the Giants and the Panthers, if you guys remember that. And he ended up getting a large amount of money because of that. And a lot of owners were mad at David Tepper, the new owner of the Carolina Panthers, because he spent that much on a rookie head coach. And a lot of the owners were saying, man, look at the position you're putting us in. If you're going to pay this guy the amount of money, well, what does that mean a guy like Belichick deserves, Or a guy like Sean Payton, someone that's more experienced in this league. So, but hey, I said this. Look, I wouldn't have spent that money on really any head coach unless I could have gotten Belichick. But hey, if David Tepper thinks that's his guy and he has the money, then why not make sure that you spend enough so that you get him? That's how things work, Spend as much money as you're able to spend to get what you want. And if you think that's going to pay off for your fan base, and I do like Matt Rule. I like Matt Rule a lot. What he did at Baylor, you guys have to remember, when he went to Baylor, that program was in shambles. Art Briles was there. Art Briles did a miserable job with his leadership and with watching players and making sure his players were staying on the straight and narrow, and a whole bunch of terrible things went down there. And that program, no one wanted to go there. It was a mess. And he went there, and his first year he went 0-11. They didn't win a game. And then the next year he's having them in the bowl, in the Big 12 playoff, or excuse me, the Big 12 conference championship game, pretty much. I mean, that was crazy the way he was able to turn it around. And because of that, because of his leadership, because of the X and O's, he's going to be able to do the same thing at Carolina. It's just going to take time because the NFL, everyone's good, and you can't just flip the switch that quick. But they will play spoiler alert because they have that many good players on offense. They've got Teddy Bridgewater, who knows how to win games. They have the best running back in the league in Christian McCaffrey. They have a young rising star receiver in DJ Moore. The problem is they don't have a defense. The defense is going to be atrocious. The defense is going to be a big problem. And especially in this NFC South, where it's going to be an offensive gun show, where you're going to have whichever team's going to be able to get that one stop is probably going to end up winning the game. That's something you need to be able to do, and I just don't think the Panthers will be able to do that. So I'm going under 5 for them. Now with the Saints, you remember, as I said, they've got all the pieces. On paper, they look like a great team. Vegas loves them with 10.5. That is a huge number to put on a team before the season begins, and that says a lot about them. I just don't know, and sounds crazy because of how great the career Drew Brees has had. I just don't know if I can trust Drew Brees. And it's not that I can't trust him. It's just that Father Time eventually catches up. And the last 2 years, it's looking like it's slowly creeping up, and it's time to open the window and let the sun in. And that's just what I feel like is going to happen. I think that they'll get off to a good start. I think that they'll get a couple wins under their belt. But I think as the season goes, they will start to slow down. Drew Brees' arm will start to get a little bit weaker. And knock on wood, I don't want this to happen, but if Drew Brees was to get hurt like last year, I don't know if Jameis Winston can come in and go 5-0 like Teddy did. Teddy was able to play to that system perfectly because he did the biggest thing. He didn't turn the ball over. He let the system and the players around him do what they do best. He scored touchdowns when he needed to, and most importantly, he didn't turn the ball over. Jameis Winston cannot do that, and Sean Payton is going to lose his mind when he comes out there throwing interceptions left and right. So I don't trust Drew Brees, as crazy as that sounds. I just don't think he's going to be there this year with the age that he's going into and the decline that he's been showing the last 2 years. If it was just a 1 year thing, that would be different. So I'm going under 10.5. I still think they'll have a good season, maybe win 9, maybe even 10, but 11 games is too rich for me. Lock it in. Now let's go to the Atlanta Falcons. Head coach Dan Quinn, 2019 record 7-9. The Atlanta Falcons had one of the craziest seasons I've seen in quite some time, really. Everybody remembers, back in 2016 when they went to the Super Bowl. The year after, and then the year after that, they lost to the Eagles in the divisional round because they weren't able to score from the 2-yard line as the time ran out. Then 2 years ago they went 7-9, and then last year they started off the season 1-7, guys, 1-7. I for sure thought that Dan Quinn was going to be fired. I thought it was over. But Arthur Blank, he had patience. He said, I'm not going to make any rational moves during the season, and things changed. Dan Quinn handed over the defensive duties to Raheem Morris, who is now the defensive coordinator for the Falcons, and the defense started to step up, and the Falcons ended up going 6-2 down the stretch, which was one of the best records in the league to close out the season. And the players pretty much put their heart and soul out there for their head coach. It's not a secret that the Falcons locker room loves Dan Quinn, and they played for him. And I think they're going to do that again this year because they know that not only him, but GM Thomas Dimitroff are on the hot seat. And if things don't go well this season, you can say goodbye to both of them. because there are too many good pieces on this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, to not have a winning record this year. Now, I know the division's tough. I'm not telling them to go out and win the division, but they have enough pieces to go out there and have a winning record this year. And I think they will. Look, the Falcons, they have one of the best offenses in the league. They needed to add a pass rusher because their pass rush was atrocious last year. It was second worst in the league. Only Miami had fewer sacks than the Falcons. So they go out and add Dante Fowler from the Rams, who has gotten better and better by the year since he's been drafted. They draft Clemson star cornerback A.J. Terrell, who I really like. They drafted him in the first round. They also went in the second round and got this big boy defensive tackle from Auburn, Marlon Davidson, who put on a show in Auburn. This guy is very, very big, and he is a beast, and you're going to put him next to Grady Jarrett, and it's going to be something special. Look, he didn't get as much attention because there was a guy named Derek Brown, who actually the Panthers drafted, playing next to him. If Derek Brown wasn't there, Marlon Davidson would have been a first-round pick because he would have gotten more attention. Him and Grady in the middle, they're going to be one of the best duos of defensive tackles in the league. And they're going to be able to just mosh down some offensive lines running up the middle and stop some running games. So I like where the defense is heading. The secondary will still be young, and there will be some issues there. But most importantly, hopefully everyone will be healthy, and knock on wood. But this has been, you know how the NFL works. Every year, there's always a team that just is injury riddled. It happens every single year. That's happened to the Falcons the last 2 years now, pretty much on the defensive side of the ball. So that's something that's got to happen, and hopefully it will. But offensively, they're lethal. You know, Matt Ryan goes into his second year with offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter, and Ryan has always shown a big jump in year 2 with a new OC. Calvin Ridley's going into year 3, and many see him as a breakout player because he's gotten better and better each and every year as a wide receiver. They have the best wide receiver in the league in Julio Jones still. They let go of Devontae Freeman and bring in Todd Gurley, who even though many think is on the decline, that's still a huge upgrade. And I actually think he's going to show out. I think he is motivated. I think that he's happy to be home in his city that he played college football in. And I think he wants to show out for the city of Atlanta and to show the Rams that they made a huge mistake, that they jumped the gun, all because he had one bad year and they think his knees are shot. They jumped the gun. And I think that he's going to show how motivated he is this year, and it's going to be a huge upgrade from what Devontae Freeman was giving us. And I think when you have a motivated team, a motivated head coach, and a motivated GM with that much talent, a lot of good things can happen. So Vegas has the win total for the Falcons at 7.5, and I think this team, just like I said, has too much talent and has a very good coach in Dan Quinn for this bet to go under. The home slate for the Falcons is not too daunting at all. They have games against Seattle, Chicago, Carolina, Detroit, Denver, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Tampa. You know, Seattle and then those last 2 games of New Orleans and Tampa, those are tough for them. But other than that, I mean, 6-2 sounds reasonable. I'm taking the Falcons to win 10 games this year. I'm taking over the 7.5. I'm hammering that over all day. I'm sealing it up, and I'm sending it out ASAP because that is a bet that I'm cashing in, because 7.5 with this type of talent, whoo-wee, baby, come on home. Come on home. Falcons going over. Let's look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now. Head coach Bruce Arians, record 7-9 last year. Did any franchise have a better offseason than the Bucs did? I mean, seriously, think about it. They bring in the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. They then bring in one of Tom Brady's targets that he's thrown the most touchdowns to in his history, in Rob Gronkowski. They franchise tag Shaquille Barrett, who's the leader and led the league in sacks last year. They already have 2 very capable tight ends in O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate. They then have 2 wide receivers, and 2 wide receivers that actually finished in the top 5 in receiving yards last season in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. On paper, this is the most stacked offense in the league. Now, I understand Brady is 43. I get all that, and I understand that he was on the decline towards the end of last year. But two things I've learned. One is when Brady is motivated and wants to prove something, watch out. And two, don't ever bet against Brady, especially when he has all of these pieces around him. And an offensive-minded coach in Bruce Arians who has shown us that he can use older quarterbacks and create success with them like he did with Carson Palmer in Arizona. And the defense is going to be better too. Look, they have one of the best defensive coordinators in the league in Todd Bowles. The defense was already underrated last year, and this year, another year in Todd Bowles' system, figuring out the ins and outs. They will have to work on that secondary, which was ranked 30th in the league last year. That secondary was bad, but their run game was number 1 overall in the league. I mean, think about it. Think about this, guys. When it comes to this team last year, Jameis Winston had them in the top 5 in the league in offense. Winston threw for 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 30 interceptions. They went 7-9. Now enter in Brady with even more weapons than last year. I can tell you that there is no way Brady gets anywhere near 30 interceptions. No way. He might throw 10 interceptions, and honestly, I think that's a lot. I don't see that happening. So, Vegas has the win total for the Bucs at 9.5. And honestly, I'm shocked by that. I think that is a for sure fire over. I think the Bucs win at least 10 games with this roster. I think the Bucs win this division. I'm going 11-5 for the Bucs. Run to the window and lock it in. Call your significant other and say a steak dinner on you because this one is cashing in. No doubt about it. There you go. Bucs to win the playoff. Bucs to win the NFC South. Falcons to make the playoffs, and possibly the Saints as well, depending on this new format with 7 teams allowed to get in. We will have to see. Now, to end the show, because this did go a little bit longer than we expected here, I did want to do the best rivalries in the league, okay? So I want to get these in before we go over too much time here. But the definition of a rivalry, when you look it up, is a competition for the same objective or for superiority in the same field. But also beyond that was the definition. But also beyond competing for the same prize, rivalries often include high intensity and bad blood on both sides of the field. They also typically include passionate fan bases that desperately want to hold bragging rights over the opposition. We all know this, guys, right? Well, there have been some very compelling playoff rivalries that have developed over the years. But the NFL's best long-standing rivalries are the division matchups. The ones where the teams get to play each other twice a year. So let's look into those. With the start of the 2020 season just around the corner, we decided to look at some of the best NFL rivalries out there. First, the Falcons-Saints. Just like we were talking about. We brought it up last podcast. The Falcons lead the series overall 53-49. The longest series win streak is 10 when the Falcons won 10 in a row from 1995 to 99. While this matchup has typically failed to generate national attention, the Falcons-Saints rivalry has been one of the most intense matchups since the teams began playing each other in 1967. Despite 9 and 10 game winning streaks, the Falcons only have 4 more wins in this series, as the Saints have made significant headway since Sean Payton in 2006 and acquiring quarterback Drew Brees that same offseason. Since then, the Saints are 18-9 against the Falcons, including wins in 4 of their last 5 matchups, and Atlanta has had its moments, obviously, against New Orleans in recent years when they swept them twice in that 2016 Super Bowl run. But the most famous game of this is, and obviously it's not positive for my side of things being a Falcons fan, but it's still a very positive, it's a cool moment, was in 2006 when the Saints played their first game back in the Superdome since Hurricane Katrina, defeating Mike Vick and the Falcons on Monday Night Football, and Steve Gleason blocked that punt, which resulted in the game's first touchdown. And the Saints ended up winning like 24-3, I think, that night. And it just really galvanized the entire state of New Orleans after all the tragedy they went through. So that is definitely a great rivalry. The next is the Jets and Patriots. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, how can this be a rivalry when the Patriots just beat up on the Jets all the time? Well, look, there's more to it than just wins and losses. There's the storyline. So overall series lead is Patriots 67, 54-1. The playoff series lead, Patriots are up 2-1 in that. And the longest win streak is 9 for the Jets from 1966 to 1970. So this has great storylines. Great storylines. Really, since 1993, the Patriots are 38-18 against the Jets and are 31-11 against them since Bill Belichick became the team's coach in 2000. Bill Belichick actually lost his first 3 games against the Jets, including the game that saw Jets linebacker Mo Williams knock out Drew Bledsoe in Week 2 of the 2001 season. And then, of course, we all know who replaced Bledsoe, Tom Brady, who would go on to win the Patriots' first of their 6 wins later Super Bowl wins later that season. Now, despite a lot of the struggles, the Jets also have managed to have some pretty good moments in this, all right? You know, Rex Ryan and the Jets' shocking 2010 playoff upset over the Patriots is still a sore subject for many New England fans, while Eric Mangini's exposing of the Patriots' illegal video recordings, many would say that that's caused a little bit of a black eye on the Patriots dynasty. The controversy regarding Bill Parcells' exit from New England to become Jets coach, along with Parcells' initial refusal to allow Belichick to leave the Jets to join the Patriots in 2000. All of this stuff has brought heated rivalry with the fans, with the people of New York, with the people of New England, with the teams. Belichick hates Mangini. Mangini's like, oh, I screwed up. You know, all this stuff has happened, right? Like these are big storylines, and that's why I wanted to put that in there. The next one, huge, famous one, Cowboys-Eagles. The overall series lead, Cowboys have it 69-53. Playoff series record, Cowboys are 3-1. And the longest winning streak is 11 from the Cowboys have it from 1967 to 72. The NFC East has several of the best rivalries in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. But the division's best rivalry is between 2 teams in 2 cities that really loathe one another. You know, they do not like each other very much. After losing 9 of their first 10 games against the more established Eagles, the Cowboys, who didn't come into the NFL until 1960, quickly got up to Philadelphia's level. They from 1967 to 78, Dallas went 21-2 against the Eagles. That's wild. But then while head coach Andy Reid, quarterback Donovan McNabb, safety Brian Dawkins, and the rest of the Eagles had their way against the Cowboys for most of the 2000s, so they caught back up there. And then to close out that decade, the Cowboys kind of had the upper hand when Tony Romo took over as their starting QB. So the Eagles did get back by winning a Super Bowl this decade and winning 12 of their last 20 games against the Cowboys. So that's something that has definitely pissed off some Cowboys fans as of recent. And honestly, this rivalry today has such good storylines because both franchise QBs in Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz were drafted in the same round. So there will always be a debate on who's better, which team has the better quarterback because they came out together, and that's always fun, right? So the next one is the Ravens Steelers. This is my favorite rivalry by far. This is not a long one. This is not an old one at all. The overall series record is Steelers 28-24. The playoff series record is Steelers 3-1, and the longest win streak is 5 for the Steelers, which is from 1997 to 1999, and then from 2001 to 2003. While it hasn't had much time to blossom, the Steelers-Ravens rivalry, not even 24 years old, has already become arguably the greatest division rivalry in the NFL. I mean, think about it. The rivalry reached a whole new level in 2000 when the Ravens won their first Super Bowl behind a dominant defense led by Ray Lewis and former Steelers great Rod Woodson. Then the following season, Pittsburgh won a late season game in Baltimore to capture the division title. In the second round of the playoffs, the Steelers dethroned the Ravens by featuring their own dominant defense led by Joey Porter and Casey Hampton and Aaron Smith and those big boys. Baltimore finally got the upper hand over Pittsburgh in 2006 when the Ravens swept the season series while outscoring the Steelers 58-7. Baltimore's dominance over the Steelers wouldn't last long, however, when James Harrison had his coming out party. We all remember this, right? And he actually destroyed the Ravens in 2007. The following season, the Steelers would win all 3 of their meetings against the Ravens. That included thrilling victories in Baltimore in Week 15 and at home during the AFC Championship game. And then you guys remember rookie quarterback Joe Flacco and the Ravens threatening to take the lead late in the game, and then a pick 6 by Hall of Fame safety Troy Polamalu clinched Pittsburgh's second trip to the Super Bowl in 4 years. I mean, I remember this stuff. I was young, but I still remember this stuff like it was yesterday. Then 2 years later, the Steelers again defeated the Ravens in the playoffs, with Big Ben turning a 21-7 deficit into a 31-24 win. And then in 2014, the Ravens finally got past the Steelers in the playoffs, with Flacco 2 years after leading the Ravens to the franchise's second Super Bowl title, leading Baltimore to a 30-17 win in the AFC wildcard round. And while the Ravens have won 6 of the previous 10 matchups in this series, the Steelers' 2016 Christmas Day victory, as well as their Week 14 win in 2017, kept the Ravens out of the players. You can feel the hate whenever these two teams play, and that's what I love about this rivalry. And then to end it, Packers-Bears. Overall series, Packers 99-95-6. Playoff series record is tied 1-1, and the longest win streak is 10 for the Packers from 1994 to 1998. Look, this rivalry has it all. Great coaches, check. Great players, check. Championships on both sides, check. Legendary games that resulted in championships, check numerous times. The rivalry has had a lot of amazing history. It's by far the most historic rivalry in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. And that's why the NFL last season had these two teams play each other to kick off the 100th NFL season. It only made perfect sense. Unfortunately, though, as of late, this has really been all about the Packers. With Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers, it has mainly been a domination, really, for the Packers over the Bears. But, you know, the Bears did squeak in a Super Bowl run in 2006 before Rodgers came along, but that's about it. But still, you cannot talk about rivalries without bringing these two teams up. The history is amazing. It's the best rivalry in the NFL. Might not be today, but overall and historically, it is by far. And that is something really cool that we always have to mention and bring up. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I want to thank everyone for listening. We are finishing quarter 4. Heading down into the end zone right now. The 5, the 4, the 3, the 2, the 1. Touchdown. Really, really appreciate it all. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Reach out to me on Twitter at Kayvon_sports or at GSMC_football. Again, you know, this is the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you and have a great night. As always, we will talk to you again later this week. Be safe out, everyone out there that is dealing with this hurricane.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.